Okay, hello everyone. See, I have a little costume change. I realized that those beeps that I heard on my phone when I picked up my phone were actually an event that I wanted to go to, that I had intuitional signal to go to a few days ago. And as I was going there, I arrived there just in time, and as I was like making my way there, I realized there that I would be speaking about it in this next video as a teaching point, and that is the sequence. Um, the sequence that is given moment by moment. You know, when I first started to go through my the Passion of Michael, let's say, instead of the Passion of the Christ, my most intense phases there, um, I was downloaded with a tremendous amount of probability. You know, as I say that, yeah, I'm discounting what I so let's put it this way. I had a number of premonition-like images, emotions, like when that information comes through, it comes in with a lot of knowing, it comes in with a lot of emotion, and at the time, because I was still on that side of the gate, let's say, I had a lot that needed to be cleared, and so they overwhelmed me with a data dump of information that was related to people that I really deeply care about. And so I had to like process it all. And it kind of feels like it was like a year's worth of events downloaded within seconds, and like a year's worth of processing or year's worth of trigger. Thing when those things happen, they trigger people's emotions. So I was given like a year's worth of big events very fast, and with this sense of urgency, because my experience of time is shifting, of what is future, what is present, like kind of like a little blurring of like, especially at that time, it was super destabilizing internally, even though I was remaining witness present, very clear and grounded in it. It was still emotion, idea. And then as that was coming in, um, I was aware that I was also being taught how to sequence, how to break all of that data down apart. So instead of like 100 slides of film pressed together and me trying to look through all of it, I was shown. Oh, look, you get to see my jewelry. Um, I was getting the opportunity to practice separating each of those slides of film, so that I could go step by step by step by step. Within that, I was also being taught how to defragment my own mind, the mind, let's say, not my mind, the mind, and understand how to interface with this information and discern what part of that information is actually useful in this moment, and also to discern where also memory and association and projection was happening, like my own distortion in the interpretation, and how to using the methods that I'm going to take off this jewelry. It's a little distracting for me. It's so gorgeous, right? A friend of mine helps me get that. Okay. Yeah, so through the quantum navigation system methodology that I've developed, I was using that to defragment myself and to try to make myself as pure as possible. So that system really does help. If you're a person I mean, we're all going to be channeling at a certain point, but those that are making it into that Harmonian civilization, um, but as you're starting to like have these capacities come online, you're going to have to like clean and clear things out, because it is a lot, and it will filter through your memory and associations, definitions, your biases, your prejudices, and all that kind of stuff. So that's also why there's going to be so much coming with people that are where their biology is activating, yet they haven't cleaned the inner spaces within them, and so fracturing and fragmenting and distortion, it's already happening. Go onto like a New Age styled Facebook group, and you'll see that. But point being, I was going through this process of sequencing. So I just went to this place. That's why I have my little costume change. And yeah, made my connection, did my thing, and immediately I knew that was it. And I knew who I needed to connect with. That was made, and then I left. So there is this understanding that my own life really truly isn't mine. I need to go and pick up the thing, go over there, da da da, sequence, 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 sequence. And each sequence, each step, sometimes I'll try to think of like what's next, what's next. And it's like I'm chewing on too much at once, and they'll just say to me, sequence. So that's that. So the next part of the sequence for me with these videos is to discuss the um the novel that I've been, the volumes of this saga that I've been working on for some time. And I will also say that, the history of how this series came and the storylines came in was like I've been watching and witnessing this group of people, this writing group that has been working on different plot lines, and one of them is this super cute pink fairy from the ancient lands of Albion. And so inspired by her writing and her use of language. And um, that was a few years ago when she first started writing her novel and forming this group. And when she did that, this whole storyline for Harmonia Rising came through. And at the time, at the time, it was just called Mayarnia. Yeah, it was more the name of the planet itself. It wasn't about this um, civilization archetype of right relationship and relational harmony that it has developed into now. I actually spent a few weeks developing it. ChatGPT had just come out for the first time, like had just recently come out, and I was just having a lot of fun exploring it. And I was also had just moved through the initial, pushback, rejection, fear around the AI systems coming out. All that the avatar pictures had just come out and stuff like that that people were starting to do. And I had done a hypnosis session and spoke with some beings that I really trust in those sessions, and was trying to understand how best to approach that situation, because years ago the just shortly before that, the thing in that people were taking things in their shoulder, there was a lot of discord and disruption, and rightfully so in a lot of it, but then also a lot of unnecessary pain was caused because of how many of us handled those situations. So I really approached that one once that came out. I was like, how do I do this? I want to do it ethically. I don't want to cause any harm. I want to do it right, in alignment and from a noble way. And I got the information that whatever tools come out as you make your way through this process and it feels appropriate, use the tools. Like however the civilization is shifting and adapting, you adapt with the civilization and discern what's the best and right way to use the tools. And also, as the time went by, I also learned about what comes after, what the technology advancements of AI right now, where they are, what could potentially be coming next. All of that has made its way into the inspiration for this saga, the 7-volume series I've been making. It's going to be a lot more than 7 volumes. There will be It's so fun because I'm having fun with the art of it, creating the characters and the worlds and the clothing. I'm having so much fun with the creativity of this. There are ceremonies, there are rituals. So I'm creating this whole world, a whole universe, really. I already know the next volumes that come after that series. Um, so I'm having a lot of fun. I'm really grateful to have witnessed this writing group and all their work. It wasn't until a few weeks ago that because I thought it was just fun. I didn't really think anything of it. It's fiction, fantasy, and I'm like very knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. And Yeah, and it was just a few weeks ago after I had pumped out all of those books that I put out on the website. Knowledge, 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 systems, systems, systems. That's my thing, systems architect. And then I was like, maybe I'll put all that into like a fantasy fiction thing. Let's just make up a whole little thing. And then I brought it all in together, and wow, it ended up being so fun for me and so inspiring. So now we're going to talk about something that might be really fun and maybe edgy and maybe scary and maybe shocking. And this has to do with the dark star technology systems. And as I said in the previous video, the in Mayarnia, on the planet of Mayarnia, which eventually turns into this Harmonian civilization. In Mayarnia, there are, like I said, let's say 3 groups so we can kind of group people into. You've got everyday people. That's how that's how it kind of seems. And then some start to go through little processes of remembrance. The land starts to speak to them maybe, or a song kind of carries something in it that seems familiar, or flashes of insight come through a dream maybe. So there's this group that starts to go through a process like that. And then we have this other group that no one really knew was there until people started to remember. And when they started to remember, they found out through different ways and started to notice that there have been some deliberate hidings of history. There have been some things gone missing. Some of the solutions that are offered, while they seem like safety, also end up giving up some of their rights in this fantasy fiction world. And as they travel from town to town, some of these people that are kind of part of this circle, a circle starts to form of people with like minds. And as this circle starts to form, and they're traveling and they're going to different places, they start to notice that some of these towns, cities, and villages, and regions and nations have some things going on that are a bit strange. So this is giving you just kind of a little bit of the plot. Some of this we'll see, because this is like these are big volumes, pretty big volumes, 60 chapters or so, or something like that. Even some of them up to 70, because I needed to contain all the information that is so fun and playful, and the storylines are so rich and deep, and I'm putting so much work into how information is transmitted through aphorism, metaphor, things like this. So let's talk specifically about these shadow orators and the dark star technology, the dark matrix, and the dark matrix information networks, and how these different things work, and how some of the etheric structures that are installed within people, sometime unbeknownst to them, how they might be affecting them. Very dark, sci-fi kind of stuff here to look at, right? So, as I said, there are things that are parallel. So just as you have this lattice work, let's call it artificial lattice work. In the artificial lattice work, there's the kind of murky, mucky, kind of doesn't really do anything. It's more functional. Then you have really beautiful light lattice work. Light lattice information systems where beautiful things are being created. And then you also have these dark lattice structures that are used for severance, control, all this kind of stuff. Where do I want to go with this? Let's talk about people. Children are born in so many different groups, in different families. All of us can relate to that, right? We all have different families that we're born into, and those families have stories, and those families have legacies. Those families have belief systems, attitudes, actions, different quirks that make each family unique. Sometimes a really beautiful soul is born into a family, unbeknownst to them, is full of these people that carry this dark star signal. And they're born into situations. I don't know how much exactly this example is going to make it into the storyline, but I'm just using it as an example. And let's say that child, beautiful, beautiful soul, is growing up in that family, and there seems to be this reward and punishment system that torments this young one from the parents, or maybe it's one of the siblings. Yeah, let's even take it away from the parents. Maybe it's not even the parents. Maybe there's a sibling. The sibling carries this signature. The sibling looks like everyone else. Resembles the family. They all look kind of the same in the family photos and things like this. But unbeknownst to people, that child in its previous incarnations, because none of us are just born, we're reborn. None of those characters in the story are born, they're reborn as well. And so in that story, that particular soul that comes in has for quite some time, over many, many incarnations, allowed themselves to be severed more and more from harmonious relational fields, harmonious relationships, and become more selfish, more greedy, more, let's say, narcissistic, if you will, more hungry for power, lustful for status and things like that. And so that one comes in with that already in the background. Do I want to go into that one? Sure. Over time, and maybe even in those other incarnations, that soul has made agreements with other dark sorcerers, astral beings, that this being allows them to work through them, or allows their currents to stream through them. Should I use a name? This is maybe somebody that will be in a future book or something. His name's Eric. Eric is one of these souls. No one knows that on the inner world, Eric lusts for power, wealth, and status. He masks it with, makes it look like ambition. Like, some of how, like, the culture around him is reflective of some of these ideas. But there's something a little bit more, a little extra about how ruthless, how sinister, how, I wanted to use the word conniving. Eric will basically do whatever he needs to do to make sure he gets that promotion, that job. He will spill deceit into the field at the workplace. He will shift blame onto other people. He will make around him this whole system of relational severance. No one will notice because Eric is so sweet, performatively, of course. And Eric looks so confident. Um, Yeah, so let's see where else we want to go with that. I'm giving you some ideas of how this current works and how the performance might look. Let's say that Eric has other siblings, and Eric does not like the natural connections that, let's say, Eric and Sarah. Sarah's so cute. She's a little timid, she's a little shy, but she really loves people, and she really likes to make people feel very happy. She likes, she loves her brother Eric with all her heart, and wishes that they would feel more consistently connected. But there's this inconsistency in how Eric shows up. Sometimes he's nice to her, and she's like, oh, there he is. I like him. He loves me. Oh my gosh. And so Sarah forms a bond. with Eric, rightfully so, it's her brother. But every once in a while, something will happen where Eric will snap, and the charge that comes from him is pure chaos, and it shocks Sarah's system. As they're growing up, and I mean, they're quite young when this is going on. Let's say maybe they're like 8, 9. That relationship becomes more and more volatile and more unpredictable. And Sarah starts being very paranoid anytime she walks into the house, anytime she's around Eric. And there have been a number of times where Eric has said and done terrifying things. When the fracturing happens there in Sarah's field, rightfully so, her auric field is open to Eric. She merges with him as people do when they're in relational harmony. It's safe to be open, and there's a merging of fields in connection. But because of that merge, sometimes when he snaps and there is a explosion of chaos that is able to fracture her field a little bit, these thought forms, these emotion and belief system, harsh words, energies are able to dart into her. Well, these darts, these shards of this intention and power, you could even say dark magic, because it starts to work with her in a way where she starts to feel insecure. She starts to not like herself. She starts to feel like she's not worthy. And her shyness begins to become so intense that she starts to crumble in on herself. This happens many times. And sometimes it's pretty intense. Maybe even one time it got violent. So bad. Very terrible. It traumatized her for weeks. The echoes of what the things that he said continued to ruminate and echo in her system. And sometimes she would find herself having imaginary conversations, setting things straight. But that never really helped. In fact, it only continued to fester the wound inside. And so even after Eric left, he went off to the academy, he went to school, he went to travel, he went to go do his thing. She only got to see him every once in a while. Still, every once in a while, these ricochets of emotions and memory and limitations of thought, habitual self-defeating intrusive thought, continued to corrode. And you know what? They started to gather other ideas that, what's it called? Confirmation bias. Yeah, she's really not good. Yeah, it's, people are not safe. Yeah, it's not safe for me to be myself. Yeah, it's not. And so over time, all of those shards, kind of like little drops of mercury, began to pool together into her system, and they began to feed off of her. They started to generate more anguish, more pain, more torment inside of her system. She found that she was really hardly ever able to sit still because there was this nervous twitching happening all the time. And sometimes when she was around people that reminded her of Eric's personality and how she felt around him, she would get terrible headaches. Terrible headaches. And the pain would be so intense and it would overwhelm her system all of a sudden. Hmm. So Sarah had heard of a magical healer in her community. Somebody that could help people with strange afflictions. And so she went to this woman in a cave far up on a hillside. This strange woman. She lived inside of a cave. Isn't that odd? And so Sarah would go into the cave, and first maybe they started talking about things that were going on, her patterns, her life, her story. And this healer, I'm like creating a whole nother story here. You guys, Lori, let's call her Lori. Okay, why not? Okay, so Lori the healer. Oh my God, I hope I can track all this. Lori starts to feel and notice the signs of somebody who has a very unique type of affliction. There's self-doubt, there's a looping of memory. It's like certain things, but she sees that Sarah has wisdom. Sarah knows how to forgive. She knows how to come into understanding about many, many other things. But for some reason, in regards to this brother, it keeps looping. There's no resolve. It just never really makes it there. And it even begins to like cause some draining even for Lori as she listens. It's like, what is up with this girl? She just never, oh my God. It's like, I feel like I'm draining just listening to it. I feel like that's enough. Okay. So now we're understanding how the transfer of this signal begins to happen. Sarah's a good person, and she's a good person, but somehow she begins to transmit this same confusion signal, she may even at times, when in a situation, even speak and behave in the same way that Eric did. So there's a transference. It's like those modem extenders, but in an inverted, twisted, dark sci-fi kind of way. Lori knows what's going on. She's been trained. And so she enters into her own state of centeredness, groundedness, connection. She repeats within her own mind an ancient mantra, Aham Brahma Asmi. Aham Brahma Asmi, until her mind is emanating this translation into English, I am source consciousness. I am source consciousness. And she charges herself not only with that mantra, but with this beautiful blue sapphire light, the light of divine will, of truth, pure existence, pure before any type of anything else, pure existence, blue sapphire light. And she scans the field of Sarah and she notices where these shards are. And in particular, there's a structure of it. Let's say this mercurial glob of it that is around the head, where the headaches, intense, piercing migraines happen. And Lori the healer takes her hands, places them on the crown of the head, and begins to consciously run blue sapphire light of truth so that it wraps all the way around the structure. She repeats inside of her mind and out loud, Aham Brahmasmi, or I am source consciousness. But she also says, you are source consciousness, to the blob that kind of has its own intelligence a little bit. It's kind of feeding off of the suffering of Sarah, but it has mind, matter, thought, formation, structure, emotion. And so she begins to program into this blob, this new program. I am source consciousness. You are source consciousness. All of this is source consciousness. Remember, I reset this field in remembrance. Let what is hidden come into the light of remembrance. And as she does this, as she runs this blue current of pure truth energy that's able to clean all kinds of karmic distortions, ancestral distortions, negative parasitic distortions, she then begins from this place of non-duality, knowing that all of this is really just source consciousness, even though there's this story going on and all that, and it seems like there's power, da 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 da. Remember. And she's able to lift that structure right up out of Sarah's head and offer it to, let's say, angelic beings of light, to the great source of life. And she envisions that this blue light just wraps and crumbles and dissolves that gray structure. She fills that space with gold and beautiful white light, charging it up and intending that it's going to continue to seal in the work until it is complete. And she does a sweep through the body of Sarah, noticing if there's any other little fragments, little shards, little configurations of this distorted geometric false light patterning. Yeah? Yeah. And clears it out and brings in true light into those spaces so that those systems can repair and be good. And Sarah notices right away there's a lightness, there's a balance, there's a flow. It only took just a few moments, years of pain, years of ricochet and echo of memory, of fights, snapshots of anger, tormented dreams, emotions, pervasive sadness that just seemed to just never ever go away, no matter how much she talked about it, journaled about it, did yoga about it, took pills for it. She did all kinds of stuff. She just couldn't get it to go. But within just a few moments, everything started to go back into balance. Over the next few days and weeks, Sarah got better and better and better. She was at a little family gathering out by a little river. She had brought some nice things. She was in such a good place and feeling so much better about her life. In walks Eric. And instead of crunching and collapsing on herself, instead of looking for the nearest exit like she normally did because there was so much fear and panic, she was okay. She was soft. She stayed present in herself. Eric came over and Eric was doing his Eric thing, putting on his show for everyone. And she saw it at a level that she hadn't seen it before. She saw him in his techniques to stir the pot, like a magician that shifts attention to where it's needed so that the changing or the switcheroo can happen, so that no one sees the trick. But because Sarah now was able to think clearly, she could see what was the technique behind the dark magic trick. Eric came over and he said something that he normally says in a way that he normally says, which was just kind of a little dismissive, but kind of a joke, right? Not really sharing in the joy of her success, of what she had just shared. She shared this really beautiful story, something super cool that she discovered about herself, and some super cool interaction that she had with somebody. And he made a little smile, which she knew right away was actually conceit, contempt, judgment. And so she wasn't caught in the illusion anymore. She saw it for what it is. Not only that, she didn't react to it because the transference system that had been installed through all those years of conflict was gone. She didn't need to push back. She didn't fight. She didn't need to argue. She didn't need to defend. She didn't need validation from Eric. She saw what was right in front of her face the whole time. She saw beyond the false shield. It wasn't there for her anymore. She saw that others still believed in this shield. Others still saw the shield, but she saw behind the mask. But she didn't need to do anything about it. And so she walked away and continued on with her day, not really wanting to participate in the performance or the honestly kind of feeding grounds that were going on in that situation. She wasn't going to be supply anymore. She had returned to wholeness, and she was grateful. And she started to send other people that she heard similarities in their story about their symptoms and about the dynamics and about the different people. And some of them had much, much, much worse situations happening in their home. Some of them, it seemed almost ritualistic what was going on there. Memories were missing. They couldn't understand why when they walked into their parents' home that they just felt off. Something's off. I don't know why I'm not comfortable here. And she noticed that this kind of thing was happening all over the place. It's almost as if there was a whole network, unseen by people, that connected all of these different patterns. And so this is the story to share with you a little bit about how that system works. A little bit. There's so much more in the novel. I mean, of course, this is just one little community that I'm talking about in, the whole planet of Mayarnia, and many stories like this exist. And hidden within this story is the antidote, and it will mean different things to different people. And it's not something that any teacher has to give you. Like, give you a special certificate or anything. It's something you can do all on your own with some of the keys that I just shared with you based on this completely fictitious, made up story of the Mayarnian people and Sarah and Eric and a very special woman that lived in a cave that knew the power of knowing thyself and knowing what reality truly is and calling forth the truth into the space of awareness and using the power of the higher will in its beautiful blue colors to set what is untrue back into truth. That's all for my story. That feels complete. Stay tuned for more. There seems to be that there's going to be 10 videos in this series. And that, I think, was video 3. And so there's going to be, yeah, 7 more. If you're curious about what I'm doing, if you're seeing some of the methodology and techniques that I'm doing, there's a lot that happens in my inner world. So you might be seeing some of the physical things, but there's stuff that happens inside of me when I'm doing those physical things. And if you're interested in learning the quantum navigation system, please check out the Embodied Light Institute website and stay tuned for the Harmonia Rising saga. Enjoy. Hope you enjoyed my story. Bye bye.